Welcome everybody to the Helpful Village release webinar, October 16th. And we have an agenda today with some news we need to share, improvement ideas, discussions, new features, and projects we need to let you know about. There's also a discussion if we have time for that. And let's get started. Before we get into news, we have a couple of reminders. Reminders as that we do a Helpful Village release webinar every third Wednesday of the month. So today it is October 16th, and the next Helpful Village release webinar will be November 20th. So basically next month. And before that, we have a Q&A webinar where today we are presenting ourselves. And the Q&A is essentially you asking any question you might have. Those Q&A webinars, we're doing them with V2V. And the next one will take place next week, which is October 23rd on Wednesday at the same usual time as we do. And then there's a couple of resources here. Please remember about the training docs guide, the help center where you can find all our training docs, and there is a Slack website where we have Village's conversation about new features or questions about how to use the platform. Improvement ideas go to ask.helpfulvillage.com. So we'll go pretty quickly here on this one. For the Q&A webinar, it really helps when you send your questions ahead of time. You can always ask questions in real time when you're attending the webinar. But if you send the questions ahead of time, I have a little bit more time to think about a possible better answer. So you can send your questions to Gary Franco, he's our national coordinator, and you can reach him at hbusers@v2vnetwork.org. I don't know if Gary's with us today. I didn't see him, but he's always with us. This is also a quick reminder. You should know about the Help Center. And sometimes I speak with customers, they don't know about this, but essentially if you go to support.helpfulvillage.com, you will find all our training documents. Our training documents are searchable, so you can search any topic you want at the top, or you can browse through the different categories and just sections of the training documentation. If you want to submit a request, if you have a question, you want to submit a ticket, you do it on the top right corner, hitting the link that says submit a request. That allows you to ask your questions, and maybe the system will suggest an answer. And if the answer is not there, you can submit the ticket to our team. That ticket is essentially something that you create when you have a bug or a problem or an issue with your data. And that is something you do on support.helpfulvillage.com, submitting that ticket. Sometimes if you have an idea that is not a bug, right, those go into a different place. And that bucket is ask.helpfulvillage.com. Obviously, we will always take care of bugs before we add any other new features or things like that. So that is about reminders. And now we have a different type of reminder, and this is forms of payment of your Helpful Village invoices. So we recently had an issue with a customer that sent us a check. We deposited the check. The check was returned by the bank. It was a huge mess. There is bank fees. We need to talk back with the customer because they made it paid to the order of, etc. So we just had a recent mess with the paper checks that are sent to us. You can still do that by check, but Anastasia made me add this slide here asking our customers that to consider basically the possibility to set up automatic payments through ACH. Those are electronic payments, so basically there is no problem with writing the checks, the post mail, or anything like that. So there is more convenient. It saves you time. You don't need to go to the post office. It helps us mark the invoices as paid because those are paid as automatically if we do that electronically. And then we obviously have the highest level of security as we would always do. So you can consider this option. You can choose any payment option you want, but just a way to help us. If you're interested in setting up this payment option for your Helpful Village invoices, you can do it. We send you a link every month with an email with a link to your monthly invoice. On that monthly invoice, you have 3 payment methods. If you want to do it by check, well, then you send the check. But if you want to set up this new method, well, it's not a new method, but it's a recommended method of automatic clearinghouse, that basically withdraws the money from your bank account. But there is a process because before we can collect the money from the bank account, you basically need to verify your bank account, enter your bank account number, routing number, and then Stripe needs to verify. They do 2 micro deposits of a few cents to make sure that the person that entered that information for the bank is the same that can read basically the statement of the bank. So basically after that verification process is done once, from then on, basically the payment of the Helpful Village invoices become a one-click and an immediate payment, and then without all the mess of the checks, etc. I know Anastasia wanted to write a training document, so that one will come because there's a few steps to set this up, and we will add that to the documents library soon. Okay, so that were essentially kind of cleaning house, administrative things, and reminders. Now we're going to move on to the next section, which is the news that we want to share with you. First news is that we have 2 new villages. We had 4 new villages that we announced in September. In October, we have 2, and those are Strathmore Belpre, which is a new village in Maryland, and then Helping Hands for the Lakes region, which is a new village in Paonia, New Hampshire. So welcome to them. I don't know if they're on the webinar today, but they will be soon. Another thing that is part of the news is that I attended the WAVE conference. So I'm doing this call from the Baltimore airport because I'm flying back to San Diego today. Just for the anecdote, I arrived yesterday at 2 a.m. I did the conference the same day, and I'm flying back today at 5 p.m. So it was a super quick trip. But it was important to meet with our group in Washington, D.C. and in the Washington area, Maryland and Virginia, and we made a lot of interesting contacts. So that was exhausting, but necessary and worthwhile. This is a picture I took. So it's the advantage of this regional village conference is that, well, they happen in person. So what rich exchanges with different members, and this they had a great attendance, and we enjoyed some of the sessions they did. So that was really great. Another conference we did in this month is the National Village Gathering. So this is a conference that is organized by V2V. This one is one that we organize virtually. I believe some of the people in this call might have participated in it. And we made a couple of very important announcements at that conference. And I know some of you could not attend the national conference or are non-members or whatever it was. So basically, we are going to share with you those major announcements now. I'll do basically a short version of a short presentation of what I said at the conference, so that you have basically the takeaway information from the conference that I will be discussing today. What I'm thinking is maybe that those announcements is something that I'm going to do at the end of today's presentation. So I'm going to keep going. I'm going to show you the monthly improvement that we added this month. And at the end, when I finish with the monthly improvements, I'll let you know more about the major announcements. So as we get there, there is also some news. And this is not a new feature, but basically Anastasia put a lot of work on this training document. It's a training document we did for a village that recently joined us. So it's Eastside Village helped us also work on this training document. And it's a very interesting topic. It's about privacy. And, we have a lot of villages organizing different events. But then we want to be very careful on how do we protect the privacy of members. For example, some of these events happen in private houses, right? Well, then in that case, we don't want to, we allow you to set the address as a private event. In that case, the address maybe of that member is not being publicly visible for people on the internet, but you need to log in to be able to see the address of that event. There are many other things, because we were discussing also with these sites, and sometimes they write in the description of the event something that will be publicly available to everybody. But then there are some pieces of information that they only wanted to share with some of their members, right? I mean, with the member participants, but not with the general public or anonymous people. So we describe all of that process into this training document. Our recommendation is that there is a conversation page where basically there can be a discussion between the village and different members, but also but that conversation is only visible to logged in members, not visible to the public. So there's a lot of nuance here in how to distribute information about your events to your audience while protecting the privacy of the events themselves and the privacy of the organizer of the event. So we recommend just going to the help center and finding this new document if you're interested in protecting the privacy of the members and your events, etc. It's this training. It's not a new feature, but it's basically an explanation of different options you can have. So I wanted to thank Anastasia and also Eastside Village for helping us get this document ready. It's not that easy. There are many options. So now that we are done with all those news, we're going to move on to release notes, which is basically the list of monthly improvements we could add this month in between the conferences. So let's get started. This is an improvement that I'll describe to you that we're adding, because there are a couple of things that are interesting. I'm going to explain what the improvement is, and then I'm going to say something else about how it came to life. So basically, the improvement we're adding this month is that the list of event participants now becomes visible to your members, right? So what happened, what was reported to us by some of our villages is that, well, when your members want to sign up for an event, they appreciate the possibility to see if that some other member that they know, if they will be attending or not, and that increases their chances of them attending the event. So we are adding actually an option into admin settings, events tab, right? So there will be a checkbox. So your village is able to choose if you want to have your members that can see the list of participants, or if you don't want them to see anything and you keep things as they are. By default, we're going to activate it as things as they are. So there's no change. If you're not interested in this, don't do anything and nothing will change for you. If you want to activate this feature, you will need to go into admin settings, events, and then activate it so that your members can do something. If you activate that possibility, then your active members, only when they're logged in, right, they will be able to see the list of registered participants to that event. Yeah, kind of. I'm talking about the option and then saying one thing that was interesting is super interesting to me because there is some nuance here, and that I added more nuance in the second line and the last sentence that it seems to be repeating, but it's not repeating. Because I'm adding more details. It's like if it's enabled, logged in active members are able to see the list of members registered to that event that have not opted out from the members directory. So if I can explain this, right? So there is a separate feature, it's the member directory. And in the member directory, you can allow your members to see if they want to put their contact information, their names, etc., on the members directory, right? But there is an option that they can choose, and you can find it on their member tab, actually, where a person can opt out of the member directory. So we felt that for them, right, they might be more sensitive to their privacy, and maybe they wouldn't want other people to know the event that they were attending. So basically, we thought that if they had opted out of the member directory, we will not be showing those in the member participants of an event. So yeah, again, with the same principle of trying to protect the privacy as much as we can, in particular when the members ask for it. But obviously, the feature will go out in a very protective way, and we have feedback or comments on Slack. We can look into this in more detail, but this is a step, yeah, to help your members while trying to do the best we can with the privacy. Okay, this is a different improvement we added this month. This involves cloning service requests. And this is, let me tell you what is kind of interesting with the service requests, because basically when we first introduced cloning, right, in my mind was, okay, we had a service request, let's say tomorrow, right? And then that service request, if we clone it monthly, well, it's going to do tomorrow plus 1 month, right? And what this improvement is about the status, right? So if the service request was originally for tomorrow, well, the status of the service request would be open. And if you clone it to the future, right, it will also be open, right? Because we don't have a volunteer for it. So that was basically the most obvious case of cloning. But there are many other cases of cloning that are interesting. For example, if you have a service request that happened yesterday, right, where basically a volunteer was matched with my mom, right, and then she took my mom to a hairdresser appointment. Okay, so the status of that service request that happened yesterday would be completed, right, because someone took her there. But if I'm cloning this monthly, we should not clone it with the same status a month from now. It will not be completed because it's happening in the future. So there's a little bit of intelligence in the system so that if you clone a service request that is completed in the past, but the date of the clone is in the future, well, then it will be either open or match. It will be match if you check that box that says with volunteer, because sometimes you get service requests or clones where basically there is an agreement with the person, so you can clone with the volunteer. So if you're cloning something in the past that will result into a service request in the future, and you select the option with volunteer, it will result in a matched service request. If you don't click with a volunteer, then it will translate into an open service request. Okay, so we got those two cases. There is another case that was interesting. We're working with Georgetown Village in Washington, D.C. And they did something I never thought about, is that they are cloning service requests that happened in the past. So basically, well, instead, in my mind, right, the best way is to advertise service requests so that your volunteers can pick them up. So initially, we want them to be open. But in some way in their operations, sometimes they enter service requests that happened in the past, right? Someone is reporting, some of their volunteers reporting about things they did for the same member, because maybe in their particular case, they were doing phone calls every day, right, for a week. So they create the first one kind of a week ago, and then they create 7 or 6 or 7 clones of that one. So the first one, right, on the Monday was completed. So what happens if you clone that one on Monday, complete it 7 times? So what we're doing before, we're giving it some status. We're putting them to match, but actually they should be completed, because if you're cloning something in the past that is completed into something that is already in the past with a volunteer, well, then we assume that it's complete. It's at least the most likely situation. So anyways, you can rewatch this video because we have a recording if I made it too complicated. But what was interesting is that cloning allows you to avoid retyping the whole service request, and our system tries to be as smart as possible to set it to the right status, right? So if we are creating a clone in the past, it cannot be open because nothing can be open in the past. So we will put it to completed or match. And then if it's in the future, it cannot be completed. So we put it to open or match, depending on the situation, if you're cloning with a volunteer or not. So if I made it more complicated than it is, it's not a big deal. It's we just try to be the most intuitive we can, and then if you have questions, you can rewatch the video, I guess. But I know it's a little confusing, that one. This one is a lot easier to explain, so bear with me. We made a change in the confirmation email that was sent out for the flex service request. So a flex service request is where you have a flexible date and time, right? So some of the things, if you go to the doctor, it's not a flexible data service request. But if a member is requesting someone to fix an iPad, well, that can be Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, doesn't matter. So by default, when we first created this, it's like we were writing the text that is in this box saying, well, a volunteer took it, they accepted to do it on a flexible basis, and we're inviting the volunteer to call the member, agree on the final date, right? And they can, from that email, set up the fixed date, right, that they agreed upon, on a flexible service request, right? So we were telling them, well, don't choose your service request. You don't choose your date without talking with the member, because that's not very nice. But then we heard back also, this another thing we got from Georgetown Village, is that when they were cloning village builder requests, right? Well, in that case, there is no member. So why would we add a sentence there saying to call the member if there is no member, etc.? So this improvement is very simple. If you are cloning village builder service request where there is no member attached, we will never add the sentence to call the member to choose the agreed upon date with the member. So just makes sense, but it's an improvement that we made, and we just wanted to let you know that it's a little difference coming to your operations. Next feature, we added a new setting, and these are new settings that you will find under admin, settings, services, right? So it's highlighted here. This new option will become available on your servers this weekend, and it reads something like this: should open service request automatically be converted to not fulfilled overnight? If you read that sentence, you probably can have a headache, but I'm going to explain what it is. So the normal course of action, right, when you have of a service request, the life cycle of a service request, that you open it, right, a volunteer takes it, and then once the volunteer takes it, it's going to be on a status matched, right? And then on the day where that is supposed to happen, right, overnight, the system is going to assume that everything that was matched was completed, because the system is assuming a normal course of action. So we're changing the status from matched to completed overnight. And then we send a service evaluation if you activated that option. And when we send the service evaluation to the volunteer, or the member, actually, I don't remember exactly, but they have the possibility to say, well, how did it go? It was wonderful, etc. They also have the possibility to say, no, it did not happen. And if they say it did not happen, we also change the status into, no, it was canceled. You see what I'm saying? Because it never happened. Now, there is another case we were not managing before, and this is the new option. Is what is new is that before, right, when we had a service request that was open and we did not find a volunteer for it, right, what we were doing before is that we would leave it as open, but the date is passed. So it was showing on your list of service requests as in red, as basically expired, right? Like, well, there is something to do with it. Usually you would need to clean them up, which would be basically two things. Either you go manually and say, well, I go to edit the status of my service request, and I'm going to say that it goes from open to unfulfilled because we didn't find a volunteer, right? But the other option is that, well, we couldn't get it done, but you can also reschedule it again into the future, right? Because maybe we missed it for the date we wanted to do, but maybe we can take the member there next week. See what I'm saying? So that we were not making any automatic actions. Like, you were supposed to clean up the situation with a service request that was never taken. Now, with this new option, if you activate this checkbox, the open service requests that were not taken, right, they would be converted into unfulfilled, meaning that you don't need to manually go in and say, well, this is unfulfilled or rescheduled, etc. So you might miss the rescheduling, but basically it's also less work at the office if you choose this option, because you don't need to change the status into unfulfilled, because basically, we had no information of a volunteer. We automatically will set that up overnight. Okay, I'm gonna move on. Some of the explanations and features involve some explanations. I hope I'm being clear with very little sleep, but I'll move on. If you have questions, obviously we can. Please let us know, and then we will add more training documents explaining how these processes work, and maybe add a video of what I said. But that's maybe Anastasia's job later. Okay, there's another minor improvement that we did this month, is that sometimes when we were creating service requests for Village Builder, we were displaying a weird message on the right. So we don't have that old message, but basically we had some Google Maps error message, because usually by default, right, if we have the address of the member, we will display on the right a map saying, well, the member lives in this area, etc. So you have an idea of what neighborhood that volunteer opportunity is in. And then if it's a ride, you have the trip, right? So from origin to destination, and we're showing an interesting map. But then if you have a Village Builder request where there is no address on file, etc., well, we were displaying an error message, but that should never happen. We were talking to humans. So if we have no address, now we display a better message on the right, which says member, this member or the service request, has no address, and it's no worries, but we don't try to display a map if we don't have an address. Yes, it's just a little prettier. You don't need to worry about it. Just we look prettier. Okay, we have another question about privacy. Okay, because we are always super careful about privacy of your members. We discussed about privacy for the events, and there is a training doc for that. And we want to explain something for the privacy of your service requests, because we recognize it's also super important to protect the member information. So there is an option that we're discussing in the next slide, is that you can choose the use of initials that the volunteers can see before matching. So you have your active volunteers, right? And they see the list of service requests. When you're an admin, you always see the full name of the member requesting it, right? So if you're Elda Rodriguez for my mom or something like that, I see the full name. But you can set up some options in admin settings, membership, right? And you will see this option. It's called member initials, right? And that allows you to choose. So for that, your active volunteers, when they go in and they see the list, right, you can choose if you want to use the initial for the last name of your member, right? So in my case, it would be Manuel A, but you don't see the full name. Or you can use initials for both. So for me, it would be MA, right? But you don't see the full name of the person. But you can also choose to have no initials and display the full name of your member to all your active volunteers. Now, this is what happens before they match, right? We're trying to protect the member's privacy, if you want to, right? Before they match. Once the volunteer takes that service request, is matched with it, they see the full name, right? Because they're helping the member. But in that case, well, kind of they need to know the name of the person they're going to help. So basically, we're just trying to conceal some information before that. And one thing we did this month is that we had this possibility for the initials before, but basically the description was not very clear. We got a question from a village, and we had three options here. We say, well, both, full, or last name or something like that, but it was not easy to understand enough. So we just changed the name of the options, but it worked the exact same way it worked before. Now the options are, we use initials for both the first name and last name. We use the full name with no initials, or we use the initial for the last name of the member. So this is, if you have it set it up, you don't need to change anything. If you have never thought of this, you can go into settings and decide if you want to set up this privacy option. And the change that we brought this month is essentially on the wording of the option, that makes it easier for you to understand. This is a very easy, I'm happy about this one, because it's a very easy improvement, so I don't need to think too much about how to explain it. This is our donation form, right? And our donation form allows you to create a fundraising campaign, and then you go through the same donation form we had before. So donation amount, the first name, last name, address, etc. Now, at the top of that screen, we have this automatic amount, so that if you don't want to type the amount, you just click on a button, and that when you click that button, that sets the donation amount. And now we discussed with one of our village, Jess, right? And they had access to some research or some user testing that said that it is better for villages if we change the order of the buttons. When I went in the first place, I had created the buttons like, well, you can donate 50 or 100 or 250, 500, right? Starting from the smallest amounts. Apparently, it's better if you start with the bigger amount first, right? So you come here and the first option you're presented is 2,000 for some, psychological reason that I find super interesting, because maybe if you say a big number first, like the person ends up donating more. So it's interesting kind of psychologically. For me, technically, I just changed the order. So we were doing 50, 100, 250, and now I'm doing 2,000, 1,500 with the same amounts we had before, but we just changed the order we display them. Okay, this is also another improvement we did. Kind of, it's easy, but you need to be careful when I explain it. So we added the button that you see on the right. Now there is in the edit page of a editable page, you have a new button that says, make this page the new home page, okay? Now, let me explain a few things. Before, when people were going to edit their website, right? If you wanted to edit your homepage, and it's a good thing because you want to change some content or update some information there, they were editing the original version of the homepage. But sometimes, if you hit in the wrong button or you delay something, you can lose some content. So that is really sad, and it happened to one of our villages. It breaks my heart. So basically, we just want to invite you to use a safer method, right? When editing the information on your homepage. And the method is what you see here. We were asking you before, right? Rather than changing the homepage right away, we were asking you before to clone it, right? Work on the clone to make sure you don't break anything. And if you break anything, well, you discard the clone and you start over again. But then what happened, what we were doing at the end is like when you had the clone that was looking good, well, then there was some copy paste operation of the new version into the old version and stuff like that. But all of that is too dangerous. Is what I'm saying. So we wanted to simplify that. So what we added is that you can clone, work on the clone. And when you have your clone ready, we added this button here in the edit page, which if you hit that button, this page you're working on becomes the new home page, right? And the old home page you had before is going to be backed up automatically into your list of pages, etc. So basically, there's an additional step if you want to change your homepage. It's a safer way to do this if working on a clone, and then there is a new button to make any page the new homepage. Okay, this is also this one is a tiny improvement, but it was funny. I also need to give you some context, right? When you have people that are registering for events, you have an option, and that option is if you want to ask them transportation question, because we know that transportation is a big deal for older adults. It's a big deal for villages. So you already had the option before for an event, you wanted to ask transportation question. Transportation question is essentially like, well, I can get there in my own needs, or I can go and I can take somebody with me. And the third option is I need transportation. Someone registers for the event and they need transportation. So what we added in Helpful Village is that if you're asking the transportation question and someone, when they're registering, they need a ride, we create a new service request out of that request. And we already know to what event they're going to. So basically, we kind of prepare that service request with some information we know, which is like, this is a ride to this event that happening at that date, at that time, etc. And then it gets this status as requested, right? Requested meaning that is a service request was created, is not visible to your volunteers yet, is up there for review from your village administrator, right? Because it was created automatically, so we're not absolutely sure everything is correct in there. So it goes in requested. When you go to the list of service requests, you will see this red line that you see at the bottom. So there are 3 requested services. That pink line there means that there is something to be approved by your village coordinators before they are visible to your active volunteers. So that we had that before. Now, what we added is that when we were creating this service request, we know which one of your volunteer activities are of type transportation, but some villages have multiple transportation services. Some of them, drive for medical appointments, some other for miscellaneous. And this particular village, they have 2 different transportation options, one to appointments and one to events. And before our system, we were just randomly picking one of those volunteer activities, right? Well, I don't know, we need to take a transportation one. We were randomly picking one. And what we did, this improvement, what we're doing now is that if you have one of your transportation services that includes the word event, because we know that this is created from an event registration, then we're going to select the right transportation type. And in this particular case, and this is Potomac in Maryland, they have a volunteer activity that is called Drive to and from Events. So from now on, when this happens, we put the new service request in the right category, because before they had to edit manually and it was a mess. And so now it's just smarter way to classify things in the right way. If you don't have a transportation activity that includes the word events, well, then we're going to do the same thing we were doing before, which is just kind of trying to do our best with any transportation service request. And then when your staff is reviewing it, well, then you need to classify and put it the right volunteer type. Okay, and I think this is our last slide on improvements, and then I need to tell you about the announcement that we did at the conference. But basically, we added just a new column into our memberships reports, and then basically membership reports. If you go to menu reports, reporting docs, right, you can produce reports of different nature. Some of them about membership, like your list of active members, your list of former members, etc. And then we are displaying there the membership information, membership status, join date, expiration date, etc. But I think we had missed adding to that report the death date, right? If for those members that that passed, and then basically we just forgot to add one column. So from now on, there is an extra column on that report. And this, yeah, something we're discussing with another village in DC. I had one more improvement that I had forgotten. This is also an easy one to explain. So if you don't have a headache, you won't get it with this one. But basically, this is a members directory, right? That you can offer to your members. And the member directory is we were doing the list of all your members, and then you can choose if you want to display the full address, the email address, and the phone number, etc. But we made these few improvements you can see on the right and left. The one that you see on the left is that now if your member is in a household membership, right? In the member directory, we're going to put the name of the member. In this case, is Isaac Champion, right? But then he's in a household membership with Lucia Luke, right? Because we got that information from the database. What happened in this particular village is like, well, two members, they don't have the same name. So it was not necessarily easy to find one or the other. So now we're just displaying the household members they are with in the member directory. And then the other improvement that we had is that on the right-hand side, you see what you have the option to display the phone number if they want to be in their member directory. But you can also choose this preference if you want to have a landline or your cell phone as the preferred method of contact. So now what we do from that information we had in the database, we're also displaying that on the member directory. See on the right where it says cell, basically what happens, like their members, they didn't know if they could text this other member or not, etc. So now by adding this extra information, well, now they feel more comfortable texting the other member. So it's just tiny improvement to the member directory. Perfect. This Q&A, but actually not even, well, we can do a short Q&A if there is any question about these features that we discussed today, but I have a lot more content to show you and I don't have a lot of time. So if you don't have questions, we can also wait for this question, have these questions. I mean, I would suggest—
We have two questions.
Okay, perfect.
Manuel, we have two questions. The first one is from Carol. Will members also be able to see volunteers who registered for the event or just members?
It's a great question. So it's a great question. I like that question because what we did, because it shows that it's not that easy. Sometimes when someone requests something, right, and then we have 100 different villages and maybe more than one opinion on how to do it, right? So maybe the way we go about this usually is that we try to go in the most careful, private way. See what I'm saying? So in this first version that we're putting on the server, it's like, for now, you only see the members, right? Because we're checking the opt-out option from the member directory. But it's good feedback because I thought about this very same question. So I would say that, we would like to hear from villages that have other ideas and maybe we add other options if you also want to display the information of other volunteers. So this it's a little bit up for discussion. I would say that if you're interested in discussing more about this, I would invite our villages to go to Slack, right? And just, write a comment there, ask other villages what they think. We will come in and jump into the conversation and think, etc. Is an area where we would need a little bit more feedback before we open it up beyond seeing other members. But it's a great question. And then do we have and what was the other question?
We have another one. So another one is from Nancy. Will the volunteer coordinator be able to see full name like admin when initials were requested for a service request?
So all the admins see always the full names. So essentially the protection of privacy we were mentioning for the service requests is only for active volunteers. So if you have admin rights of any sort, right, you can be full admin or you can be also a service request manager or something. All the managers can see full names all the time. Cool. those questions are great. I'm sure you have other questions, but I would say that maybe for the non-urgent questions like those, if we can discuss those at the webinar next week, where we have a full hour to discuss those, that would be great, because I have a lot of other content that I need to share with the group about the announcement we made at the conference. So if we can hold those questions, please remember to send those questions to either Anastasia, but also Anastasia and Gary at hvusers@b2bnetwork.org. I'm going to stop sharing this presentation here, and I'm going to go to the other one. So oh, wait a minute, where are my windows here? Did this? I'm never sure I shared the right window. So let me try again. Share. Yeah, this looks better. So at the national conference, we spent an hour, right, presenting the full presentation, and I don't have an hour today. So I'm gonna do a quick summary of about 20 minutes, but I included kind of the most important announcements and information we wanted to have there. And so let's go. So basically, I started saying something that I believe all our customers know already, is that I have this teaching position at the gerontology school from USC. Kind of pretty cool, because I didn't know, but it's considered to be the first largest and most well-known educational institution for aging, which is like, I thought that was pretty cool. And I teach aging in place there, and I got there, started working there with John Pinus, which is a famous home modification scholar. But basically, during the pandemic, they realized that aging in place was more than just the home and the grab bars and the ramps. So they invited me to come and teach this class. And then through my academic position, I have learned a number of things that I thought was interesting to share with our villages. One of them is that basically in the aging network, most of the time, they don't really know what villages do. My students, right, the gerontology students, I have 38 students this year. Large majority, 95% of them, they don't know what a village is. So it's kind of, I thought I needed to bring back to villages and say, well, I know it's not easy, and I know we're trying as hard as we can, but if our gerontology students, they don't know what villages are, like general populations, it's going to be even harder. So we need to keep working on just promoting the concept, and I know we all care about that. And then the other thing that I learned, right, is that sometimes when I was discussing with faculty and stuff like that, is what do they understand about villages? And some of them, they have questions about, villages about events and services, but why would you do a village? We will have events and services through the senior center or through these other channels, etc. And I found that they were missing the point about what villages are, right? And villages are a lot more than just events and services. A group of older adults that are achieving aging in place with mutual support and great purpose. So that is one thing, right? This is a lot more than just the transactional aspect of it, as you all know. And the other thing that I bring back to faculty and basically this academic world is saying also that villages are the most cost-effective aging program, right? And this is super important because we've doubled the number of older adults, right? Social Security being the biggest expenditure of the federal government, we need to find more effective ways, right, to take care of our society, and in particular the older population that is doubling in 25 years. So I'm not going to ask these questions today, but at the conference we asked this: why would villages be the most cost-effective program? And I think we're all convinced they are. We don't have time for that conversation today, but basically the second question is, how can we prove we are the most cost-effective aging program? And for me, there is only one answer to that, which is the data, right? It's like, we need, you are all running your operations, and we have the data in the database about, how you do this miracle of performing thousands of service requests, right, with a very small budget, because villages operate in a very lean, an effective way, an agile way, etc. So basically, for me, it's super important to bring back that data to show it to potential funders so that we bring more money to villages. One of the things that I do in my class at USC is that I invite some of the most important data-driven aging leaders in the nation. And then I invite them basically because one of my missions at USC is also teaching data, right? Teaching gerontology students how to be more data-driven and be more professional in that way. And basically, one way to teach that is the content that I give to them, right? But the other thing is I have my guest speakers, and sometimes I have kind of national experts. I'm lucky to, for example, last year we had Greg Olson. He's the director of the New York State Office for the Aging, right? And some of the things he would say to my students, like, if you have no data, you get no funding from this agency, right? And I thought that this thing that he was saying to my students, something that we need to know ourselves as villages, and say, well, we are super effective and cost effective, and we have that data. We need to work on presenting this data to the aging network. Like, for example, here, this New York State Office for the Aging say, well, this is wonderful. You should be putting more money here to the New York villages, right? In their case. And obviously the same applies for Massachusetts, California, or any other state. So basically one of the things that we are working on, and it's leading me to this announcement we made at the conference, is that I teach also what a taxonomy is. And if you don't know what a taxonomy is, we're going to share more resources with you. But you need to know that at the B2B conference in 2021, we presented the taxonomy project with Capitol Hill Village. Some of you in this room, I remember, were there and they have heard a lot about this project. It's a super important project. Some of you might have not heard about it, but it's, in my opinion, the most important data collection effort that has ever been made in the movement. And it's also an excellent way to get more funding for villages if we can show the efficiency of these villages with this taxonomy project. So there is a presentation that is available online. If some of you are not aware of the taxonomy project, they don't remember what I said, they want to learn about that, there is a YouTube recording. There is a link that is here, actually. So maybe if, Anastasia, if you can take this link somehow, not from the slides, because that's going to mess up my slides, but from the other source, and you can put it in the chat, right? For people that want to watch that video. It's an hour, maybe video that we did with Judy Berman. She's the executive director of Capitol Hill Village. Is myself, right? Because we implemented it into Helpful Village. And Scott Price is the person that classified services for villages across the nation, right? With this universal classification of services, so that we could aggregate numbers nationally to see what was the collective impact of villages. So all our customers should be aware of this taxonomy project, and maybe a good first step is watching this presentation by myself and Judy and Scott that happened in 2021. That one of the results of that very important project is that we produce a national taxonomy report where we are aggregating the numbers of 32 villages that accepted, and those are all Helpful Village customers, and they accepted basically to participate in this taxonomy project. And if we added all their numbers, right, we got a result showing that as a collective of 32 villages, they had 5,000 members. They had 3,000 volunteers, and they had performed over 20,000 service requests. And we even had the distribution of what they were. We know how many of those were transportation, how many of those were about tech assistance and other things. But basically, for the first time, right, we had national numbers of data that we could bring to policymakers, Congress, or ACL, or any other funding source saying, well, villages are doing this tremendous work, and we should get some of the funding that is available in the Aging Network. So I was in love with this. I mean, I'm still in love with this project. It's super important. But the project, unfortunately, did not go as I thought it would go, because basically we launched this 3 years ago, right? But then the technology is ready. We can produce the report any day today, right? But basically this project has not moved that much in the last 3 years. And the reason I understand for it is that essentially B2B, we brought the project with Capitol Hill Village. We started it, but we thought, well, this project maybe makes more sense if it lives at the national level, right? Because maybe though it is B2B that is in the best position to talk to Congress or ACL to represent nationally the collective effort of villages. So we basically handed the project to B2B, and then what I understand happened is that B2B wanted to have the Helpful Village numbers, right, of the Helpful Village customers, but it's always better if you have more data, right? And they wanted to ask other providers to provide taxonomy reports. So basically, in my feeling is that we have been waiting for 3 years for other providers to come up with a taxonomy project, right? Which is not something I'm super excited about, because I think we lost momentum. But now the situation is that in 2016, well, basically, Helpful Village did not exist, right? So basically, most of the villages across the nation were with Club Express in red in this pie chart. Some in gray were using nothing. And then now the current situation at the conference, I came up with this other chart, and maybe is represented here. It's like we built this chart, right? We counted the number of participants in the national conference, right? And we looked at those participants, and we looked at what village they were with, right? And the results were that 10 of the presenters were customers of Helpful Village or planning to switch. Only one of the presenters at the national conference was with Club Express and not planning to switch. And then there were 4 other villages that were using no technology. So basically, in the end, what it shows to me is that, well, now after a few years, most of the villages have transitioned to Helpful Village, and we don't feel that we need to wait that much more for other people to move before we get these aggregate numbers. So one major announcement we made at the conference is that we're reactivating the taxonomy project. So, it's like, well, it was nice to wait for everybody to be ready. But this project is so important that we just cannot wait. So we announced a major announcement at the conference, like we're reactivating the taxonomy project, and we have a new version 2.0 that is in the pipes. We're working on this with Capitol Hill Village. It's very simple to know what it is. So in the first version, we got the numbers for members, volunteers, and service requests. There is a very natural extension, and this is the version 2. It's just also, well, there is a lot of events being organized and event participants. So all of the things are now reactivated, and we will have a better taxonomy report. So just making the announcement today, but we will get back to all our customers and saying, well, how about we produce aggregate numbers for service requests, members, and volunteers, and also events. And those that are interested, well, we're going to go back to this trend that we had before. So this announcement, we're reactivating just like we did before. We want to provide the movement with a one-click report that allows villages to know their numbers, right? And in aggregate. And then if we know their numbers, this connecting with basically my teaching position at USC, it's like, well, we know smart government wants to provide funding when they have data, right? So the whole goal of this operation say, okay, let's make sure the technology is ready to build these numbers, and we can put these numbers together. We're hoping to bring our villages more funding, right, from their state agencies or counties or cities, etc., if they are able to show their impact as a group. And this impact as a group can happen nationally, right, with a national report, but it also can happen regionally. We can have this report for DC, and DC is getting funding from the Department of Aging of the district. And we see similar efforts in the state of Virginia, state of Maryland, state of Massachusetts, California. Portland has a network of villages with Villages Northwest, etc. So we can do also a kind of an aggregate report for a sub-region, and then hoping that if we want to help you go get that, seek that funding. So we would produce the report, we give you the report, and then if you can use that report to get more funding for your villages, we think it's something interesting. We are reactivating the Taxonomy 2.0 project, and well, Club Express Run My Village is welcome to participate. So it's like everyone can participate, but we need to get this project going. We cannot wait longer for any of this. I'm gonna skip that one. I'm gonna skip this one because I don't know what time it is, but we don't have that much more time. But basically, one of the things I said at the conference that is important, well, this one is important. So basically that the first generation of villages, something that I called Villages 1.0, the villages were focused on events and services, right? But in my opinion, today's villages, we should be doing more than that, right? I think the services and events are the foundation of villages. So I invite all our customers to still do that. But we have villages that are doing also more advanced things. And if you're not doing those things yet, it's okay. But I think you should plan for those, because we have seen villages that are doing advanced things, like emergency preparedness, like about Gary and Houston that is doing the text messaging system when there was a natural emergency. We're talking with our villages in Florida because, as you know, there was a natural disaster. And I think villages can help in those situations to make sure that the village stays together. And if someone needs help, maybe some volunteer or coordination can happen through the village. There is also check-ins and talk, and then health, that is another important component. So this is an example. I'm going to go quickly here because I don't have as much time as I had during the conference, but these are some advanced things that some villages are doing. I mentioned Houston, the phone check-ins. So Sausalito had a group of retired nurses, and then basically these retired nurses are also taking care of members depending on their level of frailty, and then using our check-ins module to follow up with them and make sure that they have the best care care that they can from the village. And we found that super interesting. And then there is another example of an advanced study beyond just events and services. Is Beacon Hill Village that signed up with us earlier this year, that added the possibility to do fee for service, which is the possibility to have a service request where the member also, they can have that for free, as most of our villages do. But if in some cases you do an extra mile and the member is agreeing to pay extra for some added value service, you can now basically associate a service request with a charge, right? Or some amount they agree to pay. And then that can be added to an invoice. That invoice can be sent to the member, and the members can go on Helpful Village and pay for their invoices on Helpful Village. So it's kind of streamlining the process so that you can also get fee for service and bring money to your village if that makes sense. And this is optional also. Obviously, if you want to do free only on membership dues, you can do it, but there are more options that are offered to you. And then I come back to the pyramid before, because we said, okay, services and events, check-ins and talks, and then emergency preparedness. And those are some cool things that some of our villages are doing, right? Like Houston, Sausalito, and others, Vashon in Washington State. But then at the tip of the pyramid, there was this other thing, which I believe is something that we need to think about, is that because our older adults and our data shows that there are many interactions with the healthcare system, right? In my opinion, as the future of villages will have a stronger connection with the healthcare system, just because members have so many interactions with them, and because we have so many service requests connected to those. So the major announcement number 2 that we did at the conference is that we are working on a health module, and we're working on a health module that is not available on the software yet because we're basically doing some research and designing it. And we're not doing this alone. This is something we're doing in collaboration with a prestigious health research institute that is providing some funding for us to spend time on studying how can we work on the interface of villages and the healthcare system. It's not something we're going to release next month because this is a kind of a big deal and it's a big piece. But I definitely wanted to all our customers to know that we're working on this topic, and you will always be an option for you. You see what I'm saying? If you're going to enter this arena, but you will have the option to include this service in the future when we know more about how to offer it. I'm going to go quickly through this because we have 5 minutes. But basically, why do we need a health module? Our data says it because we could lower the healthcare cost and improve care for older adults. I also mentioned an example with my mom. This is my mom on the left, as you know, and then this is my kids. And as you know, is where I was born. It's kind of funny because this is a real picture on the left. Sorry, oops, here. And when we were on a hike with my mom, so it's kind of under the heat, kind of extreme situations. And this leads to the following. When my mom goes to the doctor, right? The doc office, they take 2 basic measurements. They take the blood pressure and maybe the temperature. But the blood pressure makes no sense because my mom, when she's stressed out when she goes to the doctor. So if you measure it or you don't measure it, doesn't change anything. It's not a valid value. He asks 2-3 questions and he's making a diagnosis without knowing what's going on in her life, right? But actually what's happening on her life is very different. Most of the year, January, February, March, April, June, July, she's in her home, aging in place. She has her own pace, etc., and it's all good. But then once a year, the son comes back to the Canary Islands with the grandkids, and my mom's life is a mess, right? Because suddenly, like, she wants to cook, she wants to clean, she wants to take the kids somewhere, she wants to go on a hike, she wants to go to the beach. And then basically there's hyperactivity on this time. And all of these difference of activities, something that the doctor is not aware of, that they have no idea. This summer we ate this actually seafood, this octopus, which is a famous dish in the Canary Islands, which my mom doesn't eat very often. And she got an allergic reaction. And with that allergic reaction, we ended up going to the doctor, and the doctor prescribed a medication combination that made her sleeping for hours. And I could see how basically disconnected was my mom's life from the diagnosis of what the doctor knew and what the doctor was doing. So basically this medication, I don't think it was a good mix, and the doctor had no idea on the impact of my mom. Then a few days later, we had an incident that was very serious, and she was swimming. She felt like a stroke in the heart. She couldn't swim. I had to jump to the water, take her out, and then we called an ambulance. With the ambulance, we went 20 miles away to go to the emergency room. So it's a super critical situation just because we have a healthcare system that is completely disconnected of the life of older adults. So I think doctors should have better input information to diagnose and prescribe. And then villages have a ton of information of the social interactions of a person, the events they have been attending, the service requests they have received, the volunteer activities. So basically we have signals, right, where we could help the healthcare system saying, well, this person that used to be very active and happy well, now we feel that they are not doing as well as they usually did. And if we can maybe find a smart way for the doctors, for the village, basically say, well, maybe there is a warning to be raised. Maybe we can invite the member to do a visit to the primary care doctor before they end up in the emergency room. Then suddenly we're saving hundreds of thousands of dollars to the healthcare system. And more importantly, we're helping our member, and we would make my mom not to go to an emergency room and then me waiting for hours, wondering what's going to happen next in her life. So I think there is a huge need for the health module. There are a number of opportunities we're researching and investigating right now. It's like, should a village detect an early warning and recommend a primary care visit and kind of avoid an emergency situation? Can a village help with social prescribing? Is another aspect that we are really interested in. Like, for example, can we, once a person is out of the healthcare system, I have the feeling that healthcare system wants to keep them around all the time. But maybe it would make more sense if the healthcare system would let the member go back home and then spend time with their community, right? Maybe with their village, etc., and just maybe prescribe some of the social things, like, well, they would like my mom to, go back home, be calm, take some exercise, maybe have a few phone calls, maybe participate in some events and something like that, so that basically the village keep an eye on a member, right? And have healthcare less involved in that just going back to normal life. So these are things where basically these the interface, and these are not final, right? These are more like research questions we're working on. I wanted to inform our customer base because we, as we always do, this is a collaborative efforts. I have some ideas, you have a ton more ideas, and if we put all the ideas together, we might get somewhere. Maybe I should say this one. Basically, early warning system is kind of interesting because if we look at the social behavior interaction, there could be potentially the role of artificial intelligence to predict if there is an incident that would happen to my mom. But we would only do that, right? Because there would be ethical issues there if we want a member basically to have their data looked at for recommending basically a health option. Is something we need to study as part of our research so that we don't have tech being too invasive, right? And keeping the control in the hands of the member so that the member decides, yeah, we want to be transparent with the member. We want to allow the member to obtain into this process if they think, well, yeah, this would be good, right? If it's interesting to me as an additional service, the village keeps an eye on me, or you see what I'm saying? And if that helps me and makes suggestions, but if they don't want to, well, then they shouldn't. Major announcement number 3, and this is the last one, is basically just our call for unity in the movement, right? So basically, I think the whole village movement should be committed to have more advanced operations. And the other, like we were saying before, not just events and service, but doing more. And then so that we stay united as a movement. And the second thing is another federative project, which is taxonomy report. It's like whatever we do is like we need to get numbers for Helpful Village customers, but for the overall movement, we should have this taxonomy 2.0 report available for everybody. And I think with that, I am done. I have a couple more slides, but we reached the top of the hour, and this is just the takeaways from the conference. So I think did pretty good on timing today for once. So I'll pause here. This webinar is recorded, so you will be able to see it. I don't know if you have. My flight is not leaving yet, and I have nowhere to go, so I can stay around for a couple more minutes. And if you want to have some questions or discussions, we can have 10 more minutes. You don't have to because the scheduled time we had now just passed. So if you need to go somewhere else and just leave the webinar, you're welcome to do so. We are meeting again next week, and these are topics we will be discussing over and over again. But we can take a few questions now if someone is interested. I can stay around. If you have questions, you can just simply unmute and ask them. I have not looked at the chat. So Anastasia, do you have something from the chat?
Margaret is asking where can she find the webinar recordings?
Perfect. I like that. So I can show it. Share. Give me a second. I'm just trying to share the right screen. Just getting out of PowerPoint here. And then if I go share, that was not me. I don't find, did I close the browser? What happened? I don't see it. No, no. Okay, let me just get another browser here. And then print screen. I don't know what I'm sharing, really. Am I sharing something?
We can see everything.
Oh, God. I never wanted to do that. Thank you. Well, I just wanted to share one window. Okay, so here, two resources you should know about. First, if you go to YouTube, youtube.com, and then on YouTube, you search Helpful Village, you will get to our channel. So all the videos that we record are here. And then here you can see the monthly improvement webinars. You have here September, August, July, June, April, March, etc. We will add here October very soon. So you can just go to Helpful Village. You can search for Helpful Village on YouTube, and you will get to our channel. On our channel, you'll find all these videos there. You can also use this URL here. Maybe Anastasia, can you copy this one, or I can copy it to the chat? But basically, you click on that one. That's our channel on YouTube. It's youtube.com/@helpfulvillage. The other thing is that when we are recording our webinars, we are also posting them to Slack. And if you don't know what Slack is, maybe I have a good opportunity to show it. Slack.com. It's like this. It's helpfulvillage.slack.com. And that will take you to this page where basically here in the announcements area, is basically where we posting. This is where we posted. You see the webinar we did in September is posted there. And when we have the one, basically we publish it on YouTube, right? And we share about it on Slack. So we recommend all our customers to be on Slack because basically this is a discussion where we make announcements about upcoming webinars like the one we did today. And also the recorded videos are posted in more in a conversational way. And then this is a great way because we have a conversation with villages that are discussing about best practices, about questions from villages. Some of these questions are answered by other villages themselves. And then we come in also and we provide our 2 cents and etc. So it's a really interesting collaborative effort. I don't know what I said here. Oh, yeah, perfect. So Sheila said something about the documentation. Christina was mentioned here, and Christina responded to updating the documentation. So this is a great channel for your questions, for asking things about other villages, to interacting with us too. And another thing that I was thinking is about, the improvement list. We showed a list of improvements this month. Some of the improvements that we added are coming actually from this conversation on Slack. So if you have not been to Slack and there are some improvement or things that are important to you, I think you can come to Slack and then there is improvement ideas channel. You can go in there and then, for example, this one, Anne was interested in having the actual death date on the membership reports. We learned about it and then basically we said, well, perfect. This is something that we can prioritize, and then it's easy. It's just adding a column, so we will add it in the next webinar. So a lot of the improvement might be coming more and more from Slack. So if you have not been there, you can contact our team, open a ticket. I'm going to show you how to open a ticket. Support.helpfulvillage.com. And then you go here, right? These are Help Center. And the Help Center, you can search for our documents. You go here and you say you have questions about MailChimp, you can type it, and then you have plenty of training docs related to that topic. And then you also can come here and explore the different sections. You're interested in the social phase, events, user profile. You can explore all the documents in kind of more a librarian kind of way. And then last thing I wanted to show on the Help Center is that if you want to create a ticket, contact our team. For example, if you want to request an invite for our Slack space that I just showed, you would do this. You can submit a request on the top right. You write your email address here. I'm not going to do it because sometimes YouTube bans my videos if I add personal information. But basically, you need to add your email address there and say, please send me a Slack invite. And then you write your message. And then this is interesting. When you ask a question on the Help Center, right, the system is an interactive system. It's going to try to suggest you some training docs that exist. Ask support for an invitation to join Slack. And so sometimes you find the answer here and you click on it and you don't even need to submit the ticket. In this case, there is these interesting training documents. I would come in here and read this one. But if none of these documents answering my question, I just can come here. It's like, please send me a Slack invite or any other question you might have, right? And then you just said submit, and then it gets to our support team, and then you get a ticket number, and support team just gets back to you in the order of priority and then reception of all those things. Cool. So that was some extra training on Helpful Village resources. Do you have another one, Anastasia, from the chat?
Yes. Beta Sound Neighbors Village is asking, can we add a new member of their team to Slack, or
yes. Yeah, no, absolutely. No worries. You can come in. At this time, we're not limiting. Obviously, when we have people interested in the topics on improvement and stuff like that, at this time, there's no limit. So you can ask for a third invite. It's okay. Yeah. Cool. Perfect. Maybe Anastasia, you tell me if we have other questions or we're done. And we might be done because, we already passed the time.
Yes, we're done with the questions.
Okay, perfect. So I have one super important thing to do. I wanted to thank you all for coming today. It's a lot of fun. I know that I was speaking fast because that's my favorite way of speaking. But we had a lot of content today, so I was happy to go through it all. And then if you have questions or suggestions or things, maybe Slack is a good way. We're exploring different options. We do these webinars. We're meeting again next week for Q&A in a live session and demo. But then let's try having more of this conversation on Slack and see if we can converge somewhere, or if it gets crazy, we'll see. Okay.
Thank you much,
Thank you,
everybody.
everybody. Okay, let me try not to miss my plane. I'm leaving in 2 hours. So if someone is in Baltimore Airport, I want to have a private, meeting, I can do that. Okay, everybody. Hey, Carol, good to see you.
You too. Bye.
Bye.